If you're ever driving late at night, don't do what they did. One night, a boy and his friend were on their way to a school dance when they saw a girl on the side of the road looking lost. They stopped the car and asked if she needed a ride, and she asked them to take her home. They said that they were going to a school dance and asked if she wanted to come too. She agreed. But these boys wouldn't know yet that this girl was not an average hitchhiker. So they all got in the car and the girl sat in the back seat. After a while, the girl would constantly say that she was cold, so one of the boys gave her his jacket. They got to the dance and things were pretty normal, but what happened after would make the boys question reality. When the night was almost over, it was finally time to take the girl home. When they almost arrived, the girl told them where she lived but told them to drop her off close by so she can walk the rest of the way. So that's what they did. But after the girl walked away, the boy who let her borrow his jacket realized that he never asked for his jacket back. His friend said that they could just come back tomorrow for it. The next morning, they came back expecting to get the jacket and leave, but things were not so simple. They came up to the girl's house and knocked on the door, but they were shocked at what they discovered as soon as the door opened. If you're ever driving late at night, don't do what they did. Two boys picked up a girl on the side of the road while they were on their way to a school dance. In the car, she kept saying that she was cold, so one of the boys gave her his jacket. But when the night ended and they were about to drop her off, the girl accidentally left with the jacket. So the boys said that they would just come back the next day to get it. But when they came back and knocked on her door, they discovered something that would make them question what is real and what isn't. An old woman opened the door and asked them who they were looking for. After talking to her for a while, it was revealed that the girl they found on the side of the road was her daughter. But the thing is, she had been dead for 12 years. She was killed in a car accident at the same street corner they first saw her. The old woman pointed to a cemetery down the road and said, "That's where we buried her." The boys didn't believe her at first. They'd spent the whole night with this girl, so they knew that she had to be real. But they went to the cemetery and saw the boy's jacket draped over a gravestone. And on the gravestone was the girl's name and the date of her death, exactly 12 years ago to the day. This is why you should never answer the door late at night. A woman woke up to a knock at her door. When she opened the door, no one was there, so she went back to bed. A few hours later, she woke up again to a loud noise. She looked to her window and saw the word smile written in the frost. She reached over to call 911, but saw that a post-it note was stuck on her phone and it said, "I told you to smile." She ran out of the house, called the police, but nothing was found. The next night, she decided to put a camera in her room. But she could have never predicted what those cameras would show her. At 3 a.m., something crawled out from underneath her bed. It was a tall, pale man with no clothes and bulging veins all over his head. He walked over to the camera until his face took up the entire shot. Then his mouth widened into an unnaturally large smile. He just stared at the camera like that for hours, not blinking. The woman skipped the video until she saw herself getting out of bed and picking up the camera. And that was the last thing the cameras recorded, which meant the man never left her house.
Story time about how I catfished my boyfriend. I'd been dating my boyfriend Ben for around a year. We were really happy and he even moved in with me in my apartment. Everything was going great and I thought he could be the one. However, one day my friend Lacey sent me a screenshot of my boyfriend on a dating app. At first, I was hoping that maybe it was an old account. I didn't want to jump to conclusions if it was from before we started dating. The pictures that he had on the account didn't seem to be recent ones. I wanted to ask him about it and I almost did, but I had to be sure that he wasn't trying to play me. I called my friend Lacey and told her to super like him on the app. She's really pretty and they've never met, so I knew that he would match with her if he was still active on the app. After a few days, nothing happened. He hadn't matched or messaged her. I was so relieved that I even bought him a new jersey I knew he'd been wanting. I felt dumb even questioning his loyalty until I got an update from Lacey a few days later. He had matched with her on the dating app and messaged her. I was so mad I was seeing red. I was so close to going into the next room and going off on him, but I decided that I wanted to get back at him in a different way. I called Lacey and explained to her that I wanted to set him up and asked for her login information on the app, which she gave me. This is when things got interesting.
When my grandma passed away, she left each of her grandkids money to put them through college debt-free. But this fund stayed in our parents' names until we turned 18. My sister got pregnant her sophomore year of high school. She was panicking about college. The baby daddy left and she hasn't tried to find him to get child support. All of that stress caused a hard, complicated pregnancy, but both are okay. She graduated this last December with about $2,000 in debt. I figured she used all the money grandma left for her pregnancy and had to take out a loan. I got accepted to my dream college, but my mom was insistent that I stay local to save money. I told her grandma left me more than enough, but that's when she told me. They used all the money that was supposed to go to me to take care of my sister and her kid and her expensive pregnancy. I broke down and just lost it crying. I was shouting how they screwed me over for the kid that fucked up. My sister got upset and asked me if I'd rather have had her live on the street unable to raise her child so I can go to college and have a good life.
Storytime about the guy who was obsessed with me. We're gonna call him Ryan. Well, Ryan had a crush on me for a long time. And one night, one of our friends asked me to go to a party with them. And Ryan was going to be the DD. And everything was good. We were all having a great time at the party. Well, Ryan and I went off to one of the bathrooms. And we started making out. And while we're making out, he goes, "I really want to fuck you, but I can't." And I'm just like, "Why?" And he said it was because he couldn't get it up. And obviously he was embarrassed about it, which is understandable. So I left the bathroom and didn't plan on telling anybody about it. Until I walk over to a group of my guy friends, and they're telling me that apparently Ryan told everybody that we fucked. So at that point, I didn't give a fuck and I told him what actually happened, aka that he couldn't get hard. And apparently he was mad at me after that, but I had no idea. So he said, "Do you still want me to take you home?" So I said, yeah. And now that he drove me home, he knew where I live. Story time about my extremely toxic boyfriend. So when I was in high school, I was dating this boy for 3 months. We're gonna call him Nick. And my friends hated him because he was super mean to all of them, but he was super nice to me. Well, after dating for about a month, he started acting super weird. Like, he stopped paying attention to me, he didn't want to hang out with me. And I was going through a depression this time because my dad had just died. I wasn't really doing my makeup anymore, I wouldn't do my hair anymore. And I started gaining a little bit of weight because all I would do is sleep in bed all the time. Eat 24/7. Well, soon our 2 months was coming up. And he wanted to go to this party. So I literally begged him to FaceTime me. And I was asking him, oh, what should I wear? So I put on this dress that was really tight-fitting, which I was already super uncomfortable about wearing because of the fact that I had a little bit of a belly now.
One time I was behind the register at Victoria's Secret. This customer walks in and immediately everybody spots her as a red flag. She's just picking up items, throwing them in her bag, not looking at sizes, not looking at colors. So everybody's like, everyone's on their walkie like, watch this customer, she's coming to the fitting room, she's headed to the cash wrap, somebody get her, check her ID, get her. She has a bag full of stuff, and guess who gets her at the register? Me. So she comes to my register and she dumps out her stuff, and we're having a regular conversation. Hi, how are you? Yada, yada, yada. Her total comes up to probably between $700 to $900. It was expensive. My manager is at the register next to me, talking to me on the walkie. Ashley, make sure you get that ID. Don't matter what she's using, make sure you get that ID.
I was a product of an affair between my mom and dad. My mom was already married and had a 1-year-old daughter. She wanted to abort me, but my dad begged her and paid her a hefty sum. She signed over all rights and I didn't see her for my 14 years of life. She recently contacted my dad saying she wanted to get to know me better, and he said it's entirely up to me. I was skeptical but decided to meet her. I've been talking to my mom's side for about 2 months when at a family gathering they all sat me down and said the reason they contacted me was because my half-sister was having kidney failure and was basically dying. At a loss for words, I got up and left. I told my dad and he said it's entirely up to me, but I should get tested just to see before I make my decision. So I did. When my mom found out, she thought this was me agreeing and told everyone the good news. I did a lot of thinking and I decided I would not be donating my kidney. This family had done nothing for me. The only reason they tried to get in contact was for my kidney. So I don't want anything to do with them.
This is why waking up late might just save your life. One day when I was in elementary school, my mom and I both overslept, which meant I wouldn't be ready in time to get on the bus. School started at 8, my bus pickup time was at 7, and it was already 6:40 or something. I was still in my PJs and hadn't even had breakfast yet. My mom decided that today we would just tell the bus driver to go on ahead and she would take me to school, which would give me plenty of time to get ready. It's 6:50, I'm in my PJs eating breakfast, and that's when we hear the bus pull up 10 minutes earlier than scheduled. My mom peeks her head out of the door into the foggy morning and waves the bus on. She closed the door and came back inside, but the bus didn't pull away. There's a knock at the door and my mom opens it to find a man in a bus driver uniform. He explains he's a substitute bus driver because the regular driver called in sick and that he's early because he wanted to get an early start on the route. My mom says she's taking me to school because we woke up late. He gets visibly upset and says he can wait a few minutes since he's already ahead of schedule. My mom says that we won't be ready in a few minutes and tells him to go on ahead. He seemed really angry about this, but turned around, got back on the bus and left. But at 7 a.m., another bus pulls up to my house. My mom went out to talk to them and came back looking terrified.
I've always had a good relationship with my mother-in-law up until I was pregnant. My husband's side of the family hasn't had a girl born in the past 100 years. So when everyone found out I was pregnant with a girl, no one believed me. Everyone was so shocked when it was announced that most of them denied it up until the moment she was born. And that's when the horrible comments started. Whenever my husband wasn't around, my mother-in-law would make snarky comments like, "I wonder where she got that nose. It's definitely not my son's." I never told him and let everything slide because she's older and she's my mother-in-law. But when I was pregnant with baby number 2, and yes, it was another girl, I told him to wait as long as possible because I know she wouldn't like the news. When she found out it was a girl, she started sobbing and screaming. She was calling me a whore and demanded that I get out of her house. "Those girls are not ours. She's a whore, a slut. My son did not make those girls." She looked at me and said, "I let you get away with it the first time. I took you in as family. I allowed my son to believe he fathered that brat, but I will not allow it again." My sister and I have always been mistaken as twins. I'm 19 and she's 16, but we have the same height, skin tone, and similar voice. She also has a habit of being a copycat, from the way I dress to hobbies, even piercings. I know it's cute if you look at it from the outside, but sometimes it gets annoying. Like, yeah, we are quite close too, but why does she always happen to pick up everything I pick up? One afternoon, I was tidying up some costumes in my college showroom and found a rather cute brown and pink wig. It looks like a mushroom. I put it on, think it looks rather funny, so I snapped a picture and posted it to my Instagram. I received a text from my sister asking if I really cut my hair. I didn't mention it was a wig. While I somewhat have a feeling that she might copy that too, I lied and replied yes. I came home that weekend and lo and behold, my sister emerged with the same silly brown and pink bob cut, except this one is on her permanent hair. She was surprised that I arrived with my hair still long, then realized that I lied to her. She was furious that she had to cut that silly hairstyle because she thought I had it. Our parents think that it's a really bad joke and wanted me to.
This is why I always lock my doors at night. There was once a boy who got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. While in the bathroom, he hears loud noise and wanted to go investigate. But then he started hearing what sounded like large objects being dragged across the hallway. Now feeling scared, he runs into the bedroom and hides under his sheets, hoping whoever it was would just ignore a sleeping child. The door creaks open, and a man with no eyes and no clothing is dragging his parents' bloodied bodies into the room. This man props up the boy's father against the edge of the bed so he would be facing the boy, and puts the mother in a chair also turned towards the boy. It was as if the intruder wanted the boy to see the parents' bodies, but the boy just pretended he was asleep, trying as hardest as possible not to make a noise. Then this man started writing something on the walls, and when he was done, he went under the boy's bed and stayed there for hours, until the boy found the courage to turn his head and read the message on the wall. It said, "I know you're awake."
Story time about the time a nail salon took advantage of my blindness. My sister and I got our nails done. We used to go all the time, and while the lady was doing my nails, she asked me how I knew how much money I had. At the time, I used cash, never again after this, but I told her that I folded my bills a certain way. I told her that I folded my 20s different than my 10s, different than my 5s, different than my 1s. Anything of her asking that question, I think it's a good question, and I just thought she was curious. I got done with my nails, she walked me towards the front, and my sister was actually just finishing up with hers, so it was perfect. There's another man at the front, and he asked me how I knew how much money I had. I told him the same thing. Before I left to go to the nail salon, I made sure exactly how much money I had. My sister helped me count it, helped me make sure that I folded the right bills, just so I knew how much I had, how much I would spend. I gave her the money. Positive that I gave her the right amount because it was just folded, it was folded perfectly, and I counted it out. She takes it, starts talking in a different language, and then tells me that I owe her $20 more. I didn't, and I told her the exact amount I gave her, and she's like, "No, you didn't give me this amount, you gave me that amount." Like for part 2.
Story time on the time I had to go pick up my sister who went to Manhattan an hour away and didn't tell my parents. So basically, my sister asked my parents if she could go to her friend's house, which was 5 minutes away. So they came and they picked her up and took her to their house. Fast forward 2 hours later, my parents tell me to pick her up and bring her back home. So I text her and I'm like, "Where are you at? I'm going to come pick you up in 5 minutes. This girl texts me and is like, "Mash, I'm not there. I'm in the city. I'm an hour away. Oh my God." And I'm like, "You stupid bitch." So I had to drive to the city, which was an hour away, and I had to drive back. And my parents told me to also get my Starbucks drink, so I had to go there on top of that. So we were freaking out in the car because my mom has a tracker on her phone and she turned it off and she called my brother, so we thought she knew. But then when we got home, she didn't know.
Story time about how I almost died when I was 4 years old. So my mom was at work and my dad and I were at home. And my dad was watching TV while I was trying to do headstands. I don't know, guys. I thought I was an acrobat at the time. So anyways, I had a penny in my mouth. I know, it's super dirty. Don't come at me. I was 4. I didn't know. And my dad didn't know. And every time that I would do these headstands, I would roll over onto my back. Well, I rolled over and I started choking. And my dad looks over and I'm laying on the floor literally like freaking dying. He's freaking the hell out. So he calls 911 and I got rushed to the hospital in an ambulance. And the penny was sticking straight up at the time, so nobody was really worried about getting it out right then and there. And my throat was like holding that penny in place, so no, my dad couldn't do the Heimlich or whatever the heck it's called. Well, the penny flipped. And I stopped breathing and everybody was freaking out. And they had to hurry up and get it out before I died.
This is why you should never leave the table when you're on a blind date. One of my best friends and I worked at the same restaurant. When I came in later that day for my shift, she told me a crazy story. She said that her first table were this guy and this girl, and she could tell they were on a first date. The girl was nervous, so she ordered a glass of wine. As far as she knew, the date seemed to be going well, and the girl got up to go to the bathroom. Right when my friend was about to come over and bring the silverware, she saw him put something in her wine. My friend, obviously terrified and freaking out, let our manager know, who then let the police know, and ran into the bathroom to tell her what was going on. The girl ended up staying in the bathroom until the police came, arrested him, and escorted him out of the building. It was noon on a Tuesday. You don't think you're going to be drugged at noon?
I've been helping my friend plan her wedding for months. We bought her dress together, brainstormed over color schemes and decor for her big day. I was so excited. She had told me that she was going to take care of all the bridesmaids' dresses, and all I had to do was give her my measurements. Then, at her bachelorette party, she mentions that she's already had a dress fitting with the other bridesmaids. I was a bit flabbergasted they had done this without me and asked if they had a dress in my size, and she cut me off and said, "Oh, I'll get it sorted." Next thing I know, she's not responding to my texts or messages. I kept trying to tell myself she's just busy with wedding plans, but I couldn't help but feel like something was up. Now it's about 2 weeks before the wedding and I still have no bridesmaid's dress to wear. I contacted the maid of honor and asked what was going on, but I didn't get a response from her either. I woke up to a text from the bride this morning that said, "I'm sorry, I feel really bad for saying this, but I can't find a dress in your size. I even tried changing the whole dress style, but nothing I found would fit you. You're too big for all the sizes I could find."
Story time. I babysat a lot of kids in my neighborhood, and there was this one night that I was babysitting a 2-year-old. It was around 10 o'clock at night, so the kid was sleeping, and I was just sitting in the living room. In the living room, there was a big TV, a couch, and then behind me, it was a wall with a giant window. So it was really late at night, I had nothing to do, so I was Snapchatting my friends. If you Snapchat anybody, I'm sure you know that sometimes you Snapchat really fast. You don't even know or look at what you're sending. I was mass snapping all my friends, and then one of them replied 10 minutes later. And he said, "Who's that guy behind you?" And I turned around and no one was there, so I'm like, he's playing a joke on me. But then I get another Snapchat from this friend I had, and she lives all the way across the country. They don't know each other. And she said, "I think there's someone outside." So I was really freaked out because I was alone. There was a giant window behind me. Apparently there was someone outside. I wasn't gonna call the child's parents because I didn't want to freak them out, but I was scared.
I'm gonna tell you guys about the time that my entire class teamed up to take my teacher down. And by down, I mean fired, which is terrible, but... And to be clear, I wasn't involved in the incident. I was just asked in to be a witness along with the rest of the class. If you're not interested at this point, like, I don't even know. So when I was in 6th grade, I had this teacher called Mr. W. We're gonna call him Mr. W. He was our science teacher. And he was fine. He wasn't like amazing or bad. He was just okay. He did smell like really, really bad. But again, that didn't affect his teaching at all. One day, however, I don't even know how this happened. He asked us all to get started on our work. He was a little irritated that day. I don't even remember why. One of the girls in our class, her name was Summer. She didn't have her workbook. Mr. W asked her where her work was. I didn't bring it today. They started arguing. The rest of the class was kind of silent, just watching this. She's a nice girl. She wasn't attacking him or anything. He did, however, get very angry. So angry, in fact, that he grabbed his binder and threw it across the room over her head. It just barely skipped her head and slammed on the floor. This wasn't like an empty binder from the dollar store. It was a teacher binder full of work. We were all silent. Summer stopped talking. Look for part 2.
This is why you should never take a prank too far. Once there were 2 young twins who lived in a small town and they were known for constantly misbehaving. One day a man had passed away peacefully in his home and the twins wanted to play a prank on everyone else living in the town, so they snuck into the house and started messing with the man's body. One twin moved his mouth like a puppet and the other one poked his eyes out with a stick. As they were doing this, they heard footsteps. They couldn't find anywhere to hide, so they placed the body back in the coffin, then got in the coffin themselves and closed the lid. But what they didn't know was they were taking the coffin straight to the funeral. The people carrying the coffin noted that it was much heavier than usual but brushed it off. No one even noticed that the twins were gone until the coffin was lowered. The twins' mother appeared at the cemetery about the missing twins, which stopped the funeral and began a search. Eventually, the man carrying the coffin confessed that the coffin had weighed more than it was supposed to, so they lifted it out and opened the lid. They did find the boys there, but they found them lying on top of the body, whose hands were wrapped tightly around each of their necks. The twins had been strangled to death.